Hey, next on the T Nation, thanks for coming back and tuning in to part 2 of this week's show featuring my conversations with the confidence doctor, Dr. Bob Winters, and the head golf professional up at the Pittsburgh Field Club, one that is on my bucket list for sure, Chris Sheehan. Dr. Bob recently took an amazing trip up to the beautiful state of Alaska, and as he was sightseeing, some things started to dawn on him that he can transition back into our golf games. It's a fantastic story. Take a listen to that. Then I get to have Chris Sheehan as a part of the show again. This is the 8th time Chris has been a part of Next on the Tee, and I can't thank him enough for the great content that he has shared over the years. He is the head golf professional at the Pittsburgh Field Club back in my hometown of Pittsburgh, which I cannot wait to someday get to go see and spend some time with Chris. He gets into all of the history around the Pittsburgh Field Club and some of the great golf that people aren't aware of that are right there near the downtown of Pittsburgh. Folks, if you're looking for a buddies trip, there are so many wonderful courses in and around the Pittsburgh area. Chris is going to tell you about those. So sit back, relax, let us take your mind off everything else going on in your life for the next hour or so. Before we get started, I want to remind you about our friends over at 2 Under. 2 Under men's performance briefs are the unofficial underwear of the PGA, Ryder Cup, and President's Cup teams, and are sold in over 3,000 golf pro shops and golf specialty retailers nationwide. Ricky Fowler is their global ambassador, and over 50 other PGA, Korn Ferry, and Champions Tour players wear them. Just to mention a few, they are David Toms, Jerry Kelly, Justin Thomas, William McGirt, Scott McCarron, and Chris DeMarco. The Joey Pouch technology provides the ultimate male asset management, delivering maximum comfort from the tee box to the boardroom to the bedroom. Go to 2under.com to check out the bundle specials that offer substantial discounts for being a Next on the Tee listener. That's the number 2, UNDR.com. 2 Under, performance in your pants.
Every January, PGA Tour Superstore pros meet every manufacturer, learn about the latest equipment, log thousands of hours of training, and together hit over 100,000 balls. All so they can get you the perfect fit.
Now back to help kick off the month of September with us is Dr. Bob Winters. Dr. Bob, as you guys know, joins me on the first Tuesday of every month. He has been a wonderfully positive influence on the show every single time he has joined me. It's been a great honor having him with me so far every month this season. He helps us play better and think better when we're out there on the golf course and really just in life. And I can't thank him enough for coming back and being a part of the show again this week. Hey, Doc, how are you, my friend?
Hey, Chris, it's great to be back with you, and it's great to be back in the continental United States.
Yeah, how about that? I mean, I saw some of the pictures. What a wonderful trip you just went on. Tell us about it.
Oh, well, I'll tell you what, I hadn't, really taken a trip, with my beautiful wife, April, for many, many years. So we decided to take this unbelievable Alaskan cruise. And we actually flew from Orlando to Seattle. We actually, departed from Seattle. And we were just so fortunate, Chris. We had great weather every day, on this 8-9 day, cruise up, in the, southeastern part of Alaska and going to all the different places. And it was just fantastic. We went to Juneau, we went to Skagway, Ketchikan, went to Glacier National Monument Park. We visited Tongass National Forest. Now then cruised back, down the Pacific to Victoria, British Columbia, then sailed all night back into Seattle. And I was just asked just yesterday, said, what was the very best part of the trip? And I looked at them and I honestly said, all of it. I mean, the time we boarded our cruise line, which is Norwegian Cruise Lines, it was the Encore, just a beautiful big boat and a lot of people, but a lot of great restaurants, a lot of great food, unbelievable service. And then just the weather every day. Somebody said we were threading the needle every day because we would actually sail at night and we had the full moon that was shining on the water and, looking out from our balcony from our room. It was just glorious. And if you really wanted to have a trip that was nirvana, and I would heartily recommend if anyone's ever going to take a cruise, please go to our 49th state. I mean, it is just absolutely gorgeous. And every time you turn around, every port you go into, it's prettier than the other. And I'm not getting paid by the Alaskan Cruise Commission or the Alaskan Travel Bureau here. I'm just telling you, I loved it, and I'm ready to go back again. It was just that that very, very special.
Wow. You were telling me that you learned some things along the way that you could relate back to golf while you were up there. Talk about what Alaska taught you about patience and persistence.
Well, everything that you do, you go on these shore excursions and I've, traveled a lot and I've been very, very blessed, with this game. So we actually, went to Ketchikan, and Ketchikan is right there in the heart of Tongass National Forest. The people who don't know Tongass is the United States' largest national forest. And Tongass it's called a tropical rainforest because it has a third of the world's tropical rain plants in this temperate climate. You wouldn't think that in Southeast Alaska, but it does. And they have things like skunk cabbage that, when the bears wake up, from the winter hibernation, they eat because it acts like a natural laxative. And, there's everything in this rainforest you could see. But as we were on our hike, Chris, it was about a 2, 3 mile hike on these trails in this beautiful forest, trees thousands of years old, hundreds of feet high. There were just unbelievable streams, Chris, just teeming with salmon. And the word is anadromous, which means that salmon, they spawn, then they actually spawn in the fresh water, then they actually swim out to the ocean, and they stay there for 6, 7 years and they mature, and then they actually come back to the place, where they were actually born. And now there they actually spawn, they reproduce, they lay their eggs, and then they die. And that's the cycle of life. But as we were, going through this wonderful hike, we came across an unbelievable creek or little river, and it had these great, waterfalls. And these waterfalls were white water, and they were running very fast. But they say that Ketchikan, is really the salmon capital of the world because the king salmon, coho, silver, they're all running. They're all trying, to get back, to their, spawning grounds. And as I was watching this unbelievable waterfall, I was looking, and I could see these black, 3 foot, look like silver salmon that were actually just going up, this waterfall. And they would go up and they would make it, 10, 12, 15 feet. They had to go about 20, 25 feet. They'd get up about halfway. And then, the water would actually knock them back down. Now, this just went on. And I was just mesmerized, almost hypnotized by, this occurrence. I just kept seeing this salmon. And I thought about, a book years ago called The Greatest Salesman Ever, ever told, the greatest sales story ever told by Og Mandingo. And in it was the scrolls. And what the greatest secret was, persist until you succeed. And as I was watching these salmon, I was watching their persistence. I was watching this determination. This was instinctive. This was something that, they are born to do. That's their drive. It's their determination. And I started thinking of all places in the middle of Tongass National Forest, here is a great golfing lesson. Because how many times, do we as golfers, we get upset, we think everything's against us, we hit 2 bad shots, and we're ready to throw in the towel. And here were these silver salmon, these coho, these chinook, all of these different salmon. They were actually just going up and getting beat down and going back up and getting beat down. And I've always loved, the old Japanese, philosophy that 7 times knocked down, 8 times up. And that's really what these salmon do. And when I start talking about confidence, because patience is confidence waiting to happen. These salmon were creating their own living, breathing reality. They were trying to be persistent. They were staying patient. They just refused to lose. They, persisted until they succeeded. And I saw a couple of these salmon finally get up, this unbelievable waterfall stairway to get, to the next level of sort of quiet water. But then they'd have to go to the next, waterfall. But I've always thought about, golf and patience because patience, persistence, grit, determination, I mean, these, are the cornerstones of great play for every level of golfer. Because I sort of, created a definition a long time ago, Chris, about patience. And patience was the capacity to accept or tolerate delays, trouble, or any type of suffering without getting angry or upset. And as Ted Lasso was saying in one of his adventures, of talking about, football in Europe, and he was telling a player, you got to have the mind of a goldfish because a goldfish only remembers things for about 7 seconds. And then, they're on to something new. Well, we can actually learn from another fish, the salmon, the patience and the persistence of a salmon to actually, if you get knocked down, hey, get back up, get yourself, refocus, get back into the shot, start fresh. And no matter how many times you get knocked down, and I remember hearing Jack Nicklaus talk about this. He said, even if I haven't gotten anything going for the first 16, 17 holes, if that 18th tee shot or that putt on 18th, green, that final putt, I always use that as a springboard to build confidence, to build momentum for the next shot. And that's really what, I was learning in Alaska. And it's the darndest thing that you can go, the furthest place away from a golf course and still be thinking about this great game.
Indeed. And Doc, you recently posted on social media something that we've talked about on the show for years, and that's all the negative self-talk that we do when we play. Talk about that and the dangers of our brain hearing our own voice saying how bad we are.
Well, I tell you, I was at the University of Virginia for many, many years, and I was under, the tutelage of some unbelievable people, just great, great people. Dr. Linda Bunker, Dr. Bob Rotella, Dr. Gosh, Bruce Ogilvy even came in. He was like the grandfather of American sports psychology. And I had, Dr. Bob Covert. I had all these great minds that I was learning from. And as I was in the catacombs of the Alderman Library, doing all the doctoral scholar, doing all that work that you're supposed to be doing for research, I came across something that I thought, was really astonishing because we all know Norman Vincent Peale and the power of positive thinking. But, the professional literature is really quite clear on this, is that positive thinking, positive doing, that is great. But the real power is in negative thinking. I mean, negative thinking, negative feeling is 100 times more powerful than positive stuff. And so if you could just eliminate the negative thoughts, the negative feelings, the negative self-talk, the negative behavior, you would be doing yourself a huge favor. And everybody goes, well, I know all this positive stuff, I don't think it works. And it's like I told the guys that here's a book about positive thinking. It's written by Norman Vincent Peale. He goes, well, I'll read it, but it probably won't be do me any good anyway. I mean,
Wow.
here's a person, fighting for their failure. All right. And I think that's really what a lot of us do. We sort of fight and we want to hang on to this failing. And we don't realize that our words that we say and use to ourselves, they can be healing bandages. They really can. And they can be motivators. They could be springboards for success, but they can also be emotional Harry-Carry. They can be daggers of destruction. And they can really take us down a couple of rabbit holes and put us in a negative anxiety spiral. I mean, just one saying, think about it. I heard an athlete, I said, what's the worst thing you have ever said to yourself? And I'm not talking about profanity and just having some emotional catharsis or just having a breakdown. He said, I think I found myself at the bottom of the barrel, bottom of the basement, when I said, I'm pathetic. I mean,
Oh,
I'm just pathetic. I'm just the worst player ever. And I don't even deserve to be in this game. Now, when you have a player that's hit rock bottom right like that, I mean, obviously there's only one place to go but up, but you've got to be aware of when you're actually using all of that self-talk and look at your behavior. And you can't always be right and the whole world wrong all the time. So if you've got a lot of people say, you know what, if you would actually improve your attitude a little bit, you might, be pretty good at this game. And a lot of people who are told that become very defensive and they become even more negative. But instead of beating yourself up after a shot, I think you need to kind of be like a salmon. I think you got to sit there, you got to regroup, you got to recommit, you got to say, okay, all right, that one didn't work. But here, this is the one that's going to get me going. Instead of actually just beating up on yourself, putting yourself in that negative anxiety spiral. Because I got to tell you, Chris, nothing, absolutely nothing is positive coming from a negative statement or a negative self-talk or a negative feeling. Nothing good comes out of it. And we know this because when you start talking bad to yourself, there's neurochemistry that happens. I mean, the neurotransmitters, start, to become very blurred. Your objective critical thinking becomes scattered. It becomes cluttered. You don't really have, clarity of thought, certitude of purpose. So the moment you start saying, you know what, I'm going to think differently. I'm going to talk differently. I'm going to act differently. So one of the first things I'm always telling people, if you have a lot of negative feelings, get your head up. And I don't mean get it, out of your rear end. I'm just talking about get your head up. And what it does, it sort of creates, different neurotransmitters. It creates hormones. It creates oxytocin. It creates serotonin. It creates, a lot of endorphins. But, it doesn't allow that cortisol, that stress hormone, to fester. And that's really what happens. But as soon as you put your head down, I mean, wow, a lot of bad things happen. And I think it was the great Jackie Burke that said, get your head up. In the jungle, animals who have their head down get eaten. And I've always remembered that. I thought that was a great way to think about it. So you got to get your head up and tell yourself, okay, you know what? I know I've had some bad things happen, but I'm going to quit beating up on myself and actually knocking myself out of my game. I'm not finding out how good I can be. And that's really what my mission statement in this whole world's all about, Chris. I'm trying to help players become the very best version of themselves, their golfing selves that they can be. And it's funny when you start, talking a little bit nicer to yourself, good things start to happen. They really do.
Dr. Bob, speaking of good things, your junior golfers continue to have great success. They're winning tournaments, committing to big time colleges after their senior years in high school. Update us on some of them.
Oh, I've got, I've just been so blessed. I've been obviously with David Ledbetter and our Golf Zone Ledbetter Junior Golf Academy for, the past 25, 26 years. This weekend, we had, three of our Ledbetter Golf Academy students, Vijay Kumar, Caden Paranik, and Noah Peens, all finished, first and tied for third. In fact, the first eight, top finishers out of this HJGT Eagle Creek were Golf Zone Ledbetter, people. And, their shooting scores 71, 68, 66, 69. I mean, playing some great golf. I've had just had a meeting today with our Florida Southern College women's golf team. They're getting ready to travel to Indiana to play in a big event there. And I had the Indiana University East team just win, the Indiana University Highland Invitational. So we've got a lot of great people. And it's funny now, so I'm looking back at all the different, rookies, what we call newbies, the freshmen. I've got them that, places like Loyola, at Auburn, at Colgate, Lynn University. I mean, they're just all over the place. There's just a lot of great, golfers playing for some great universities, D1, D2, D3, NAIA. I'll tell you what, it's just a great time to be involved with golf at this level, helping, young players develop. And as Tom, was talking here with you earlier, I mean, there's so many great players coming out of college. I mean, by the time they get to be 17, 18, by all the junior golf we've sort of prepped them for, they're almost grizzled veterans, Chris. I mean, they've traveled all over the country. They played in a lot of team events, two player events, and they're really, really very, very sharp. So yeah, we've had a very good start to this fall season, Chris.
Doc, before I let you go, remind our listeners again, how can they stay up to date with all the great things that you're out there doing, get involved with you, learn from you, and sign up for the things that you're out there doing? How can they do that?
Well, Dr. Bob Winters or Dr. Robert Winters can be found. You can find me at Dr. Bob Winters on Instagram. You can find me at Dr. Robert Winters or Robert Winters on Facebook. You can go to my website, theconfidencedoctor.com, and you can Google me and you can get in touch with me. I can be found, Chris, and as you say, and a lot of people, and this is something, I've always wanted to tell people, is that, my trademark has always been this, is that, when you change your mind, you change your game. And what that really means, I really thank you for always having me on, is that the moment you change the things that you think about, talk about, do, is the moment that those things start to change as well. So when we go from this negative sourpuss, just nothing's working, and we say, you know what? I'm going to move in the opposite direction. You will be surprised at how much more you're going to enjoy this great game.
That's perfect. Dr. Bob, I can't thank you enough for taking time out of your night to come back and be a part of the show. And you have been every month this season. I can't thank you for all the content that you have given us and the way that you perk up spirits. I always feel better after you have been a part of the show. And I always learn stuff. Like I said to you, I think last time, I always keep a notebook next to me here when you're going to be a part of the show because I always write things down and I always learn things so I can go back. I keep that notebook with me when I'm playing around at golf, like the pros. They've got their yardage books. Well, I've got my Dr. Bob book where I can reach in, read a little something that is going to make me feel a little bit better, especially if I've hit a bad shot or I've ended up someplace that I didn't want to. I can read what you've said, and that makes me feel a little bit better, gets me refocused, re-energized, and re-excited to go play the next shot. So I thank you so much for that.
You're just so welcome, Chris. And always remember, the next time you're on the golf course and you feel a little bit down, I need you to think like a salmon. I need you to be patient. I need you to be persistent. I need you to actually just keep, fighting up that stream, pal.
Absolutely. Take care, Doc. All the best to you and your family. Look forward to catching up with you again next month.
All right. Thanks, Chris.
See you, Dr. Bob. That is the great Dr. Bob Winters. At Dr. Bob Winters is where you're going to find him on social media. TheConfidenceDoctor.com is his website. And like I say, I've got my Dr. Bob notebook right here. And what I wrote down tonight, patience is confidence waiting to happen. And building confidence and momentum for the next shot or the next round is what you need to do. He talked about how Jack Nicklaus did that, and that is great, right? Things may not be going the way you wanted it in this round, but you can build off that for the next hole, the next 9, or your next round. And I think that's fantastic. So like he talked about the salmon, right? Persistence and patience, get up that stream. Golf is always going to be something that's going to try to knock you down. There's something that's going to go wrong in every round, but it's how you react to that and how you're persistent to go and hit the next shot and to make something positive happen. Doc is always great about reminding us how to do that. So I thank him very much. Look forward to catching up with him again as we kick off October. Coming up next is a guy who's the head golf professional at a club that's on my bucket list, the Pittsburgh Field Club, and that is Chris Sheehan. Before I bring Chris into the show, let's talk about our friends over at Squares Golf. And folks, do you sway and you're off balance in your golf swing? You know what? It could be your shoes. A golf shoe needs structure to provide stability and reduce sway. How can you tell if your shoes lack structure and are hurting your game? If you can hold your shoes by the toe and heel and twist it, toss it. Squares was designed for the perfect balance of structure and comfort. Isn't it time you tried Squares? Try the new Speedbolt at squares.com. That's SQAIRZ.com. All right, now back in making his 8th appearance with me here on Next on the Tee is Chris Sheehan. Let me remind you a little bit about Chris's background. He's from Warwick, Rhode Island. He attended Trinity College over in Hartford, Connecticut, where he was the captain of both the baseball and hockey teams, and he was an All-Region and All-American nominee in both sports. In golf, Chris won the 2003 Western New York PGA Section Assistant Professional Championship, and he tied for 38th at the TaylorMade Adidas National Assistant Professional Championship later on that same year. He spent 6 seasons working alongside of 3 of Golf Digest top 100 instructors, including Bill and Craig Harmon, plus Todd Stones. In 2009, Chris was the PGA Southwest Florida Section's Private Club Merchandiser of the Year. He won the Southwest Florida Section PGA Bill Strasbaugh Award in 2015. The following year, he was named the Southwest Florida Section PGA Professional of the Year. He's worked at clubs like Oak Hill, Inverness, and Lebanon Country Club, to name only a few, and now he is the head golf professional at Pittsburgh Field Club in my hometown of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And I couldn't be more excited that I get to have him back with me this week here on Next on the Tee. Hey, Chris, thanks for coming back on the show.
Oh, absolutely, Chris. Just a blessing to always be with you. Appreciate the opportunity to come on.
So, Chris, it's been a minute since I got to have you as part of the show. Catch us up. What's been going on with you so far here in 2024?
Well, the Pirates were in a playoff spot, and then they stunk for 2 weeks.
Don't mention. I mean, that team, Chris. I don't.
Sure.
Until they get a new owner, I just don't think they're ever going to be a serious contender. I just don't think that the owner's going to allow it.
I'll tell you, they're close. I know you know I'm a New England sports fan, being where I grew up, and it's kind of a Red Sox Patriots thing. But I really am in love with the Pirates, and I've got my little 11-year-old is a baseball fanatic. They're so close, and they've got a really young pitching staff that are taking their lumps right now. But everyone who I talk to says when the Pirates are right, this city is off the charts. And I already believe the city's off the charts, but in particular when the Pirates are good, it's a year-round festival. So I'm looking forward to that sometime soon.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope you get to experience it. I know as a kid growing up in Pittsburgh and spending my summers at Three River Stadium and being around the team, particularly in '79 when they won the whole thing. They're right. They're not lying to you. When we get to spring and then throughout the summer, when the Pirates are competitive, boy, the town is just electric. I hope you get to experience that.
It's just a year-round sports fest. Yeah, I can't wait. So, everything's good. Just dropped my oldest off to college, going to Pitt, got in early.
Nice.
Yeah, gonna study neuroscience, and so that's a little change. And my little guy just started middle school, so he's in the depths of travel soccer. He's doing well, and fall ball starts here soon. And Liz is doing great. 27 years as a nurse. So everybody's doing great. Yeah, the club's doing great. But I just couldn't be any more blessed.
Chris, I want to go back into your career a little bit. And like I mentioned in your intro, you've worked at some of the best courses in our country. And I want to talk about Oak Hill for a minute. It's hosted 13 major championships. It's a Donald Ross design enhanced by oak trees that were planted by Dr. John Williams. Talk about Oak Hill and the time that you spent there.
Well, it was unique in that I wasn't a golfer growing up, and I got a job in the golf business, kind of backdoor. I met Billy Harmon basically as the fetch boy for his golf school on Fisher's Island, and I took him to the boat when the 2-day school was over, and he offered me a job in California, and I went, and then he sent me to Craig, and that was Bighorn was different, but Oak Hill is just it's one of those magical places in the country and really in the world, and the membership is just in love with the game. They're in love with the history of the game. My brother-in-law is the current club president. My sister-in-law is the first and only female elected ever to the board. My wife grew up there, so it was unique. I met my wife there. I got engaged in 6 months. So my memories of Rochester, are extremely fond about the club, but also about meeting my best friend and my wife, and it's just it's a huge park with a ton of history. It never gets old. I don't get back there very often, but when I do, I still marvel at it. I know they just went through a redesign with Andrew Green leading up to the PGA last year, and it was incredible. It was not something that I recognized, but it was recognizable, if you can believe that. It was just different, and but it's still just a magical place. And working alongside Craig and Craig's system, which was just 3 years, you did 15 new things every year as the first assistant, the second assistant, the third assistant. Your third year, you're the lead assistant. You run his books, you pay his bills. It was just incredible preparation for my life and my career, and I couldn't have been more lucky or blessed to have met Billy and went to work for Craig. And obviously that sent me to Inverness for a little bit, and it was the foundation of my life, my wife, my career, and everything that I love happened in Rochester.
Chris, you were there leading up to the 2003 PGA Championship, which was won by Sean McKeel, who's a wonderful friend of this show.
Yes.
What was it like being there and preparing for a major championship about to be played there on the course.
Yeah, and I was the third year guy, so I was kind of the lead guy. So you had to do all the buying, all the merchandise for it, and back then the host club had exclusive rights to the merchandise up until that point. So it was a tall order, to come up with a buying plan for $4 or $5 million, having little to no experience doing it, but it was great. The biggest memory that I have is just a club of that nature, and all of them, the Wingfoots and the Marions. When you get selected to host an event like that, I'm watching what Oakmont's doing right now for next year's Open, but the unstoppable force of these memberships to pour their blood and guts into it, just to showcase their home for the rest of the world, is truly a humbling sight to see. The organization, we're going through volunteers because the field club here has been volunteering at Oakmont for forever. So, I'm working with a member here who's sort of a chair of our volunteers, and that takes work, and we're just spotting a hole. We need 90 people to work for the week, and that's a task. So to watch what these clubs do, Oak Hill was no different. And when I left Oak Hill, I went into Inverness. That was the '04 Senior Open. So I got to do 2 years of major championships back to back, and the amazing thing is what these members pull off. They step aside, even though they're still paying for it. They just want to put out the absolute best show they possibly can, and to watch it happen when you're there, it's an exciting thing. It's like you're waiting for a volcano to explode. It's just there's so much build up and anxiety and build up, and then it finally goes off, and there's a sigh of relief, and then they start working on the next one, which is incredible. But it was truly a really, really special year of my life.
Yeah, so take that half a step further, Chris. I wonder what it's like being inside. You mentioned volcano. What's it like being inside all of that? Is everything is swirling around you? You've got all the anticipation. You've got all the stress. You've got the guys getting the course ready. You got the USGA people everywhere. You got the patrons coming in and their level of expectations. You got to worry about the weather. Take us inside what all of that is like.
It's remarkable. It's exciting to start there. I started there in '01, and when you stand on that first tee of the East Course and you hit a tee shot, my thoughts always went to every time I played it, which was hundreds of times. But the greatest players who have ever walked those fairways is that's something, that's a feeling that never goes away with me. And then you you have the merchandise, and you've got the volunteers and the transportation, and everything that the city actually pours in so much effort to it. And I know Devin at Oakmont's going through it right now, and I've got a merchandiser here whose fiance works for the USGA in transportation, and it's just it's every day, there's nothing that goes, there's no stone that goes unturned, and you're just trying to impress every person who sets foot or pays for a ticket. You're trying to take care of these volunteers, a year in advance. You got to have your uniform orders in, which we just went through. It's just there's just so many layers to it. It's mind-boggling to fathom what these members do, and because and in the USGA, when I was at Oak Hill, it was the PGA, and it was in August back then too. Now the PGA, last year at Oak Hill was in May. That's a whole nother thing for the superintendent. You're trying to wake the golf course up, and you're trying to get the place going. They had just finished Andrew Green's renovation. They were still growing in grass. Oakmont's still trying to build a range. They don't even have a range right now. So it's just that there's so many facets to it. It's hard to explain, but it's an exhilarating ride, and one that I'll certainly hope to volunteer for again, and hope that I get to be a part of Oakmont in 2025. It's just an awesome feeling.
Your neighbors over at Fox Chapel there in Pittsburgh recently hosted the U.S. Women's Senior Open. Did you get an opportunity to sneak across the street a little ways and go check out that tournament?
I didn't get over to spectate, but one of the longest running probably interclubs in the country, and probably in my opinion the best, is a Ryder Cup match between Oakmont Field Club, Fox Chapel, and Longview, and it's called the Diebold Cup. And in July, which was we had to actually move the event up a week this year to accommodate Fox Chapel hosting the Senior Open for the ladies. We played we were the only players that played the golf course on that Saturday morning, and that was it for golf for the next 8 days. So we saw the entire build out. Alex Childs, the pro there, is a great kid and a great guy and a great friend of mine. And he's got to buy the merchandise and he owns the concession, so it's a different beast than, let's say, a club owning the concession. And the players start to come in, and but it was tournament ready. They were still moving things around. I think Saturday morning was the delivery or Thursday. Yeah, Saturday morning was the delivery of all the USGA vehicles, which is a fleet of probably 50 to 60 vehicles just for the week. So yeah, I didn't get to spectate it all. We had plenty of things going on here, and that tournament runs all weekend. But it was neat to see, and they did a great job. It's a tremendous sense of pride for golf in the region. Certainly that Fox Chapel is an awesome venue, along with the other 3 clubs that are in sort of this 5 square mile radius in Pittsburgh.
So you got to tell us, how did those matches turn out? Did you guys win?
No, Longview actually won this year. They beat Oakmont, which doesn't happen often, but they jumped out to an early lead. Field Club finished 3rd, but we've got a young crew coming up. We've got some nice players. We had a kid who plays for Miami of Ohio. He's a member here. Get this, he shot 66, 62, 67 in the club championship here.
Wow.
Yeah, and he's playing at Miami of Ohio. Actually got in as an alternate 2 weeks later to the U.S. Amateur, so he's a heck of a player. We've got a kid named Kevin O'Brien who's a +4 or 5. Tommy Leach is a great player here. We've got so many good players, so we'll get there at some point. But it's an amazing 3 days of golf. We do it for the under 50s, so to speak. We do it for the seniors. It's called the McLaughlin Cup. We do it for the ladies. They call that the Abernathy Cup. So the Ryder Cup style history of these 4 clubs has been going on for a long time. It's always a blessing to be a part of it.
Speaking of history, you've got a rich one of your own there at the Pittsburgh Field Club. Talk about the history of the golf course and the club.
Yeah, it's recognized as the 10th oldest club in America. It dates back to, it was basically became official in 1882, but there's history of the club. It was originally called the Pittsburgh Cricket Club, dating back to 1871. And you'd probably know the area. The original site of it was down where now is Frick Park. But they had started a little cricket club, and they had leased land from Henry Frick. Golf started to become Americanized, and they wanted to play some golf, so they laid down 3 holes, and they kept asking Mr. Frick to help them build out, and he got so sick of them, he evicted them. So they ended up with the property that they have here now in 1914. They built the golf course and the clubhouse pretty much in a year. Alex Finley, the father of American golf, did the majority of the work. It's been touched up a bit by some folks that we talked about last time I was on, but it's a timeless golf course. It never gets old. I was thinking about it driving in. I just it's just an excellent golf course in excellent condition. The members are truly blessed. They really provide the resources that we ask for, so that we can give them not only the best golf course but the best services available. And we just opened some pickleball courts, and there's a lot more coming down the pipeline. But it's above all, it's the membership is the all-star of the whole thing. Just the nicest people that so dedicated to this place, and it's a generational type club, more so than the others in the area. But it's a great venue. It's a great facility. It's recognized. The clubhouse is recognized the past 3 years, and the golf course obviously hosting a major championship a while back, and the Western Open a while back. But it's really the membership that makes this place stand out, and I couldn't be happier to be the golf pro here at Field Club for these members.
Chris, there are a couple of things that you mentioned during that part that I want to go back and touch on, because you mentioned Alexander Finley being the original designer, but there's been a lot of other guys that have touched it. Tillinghast has been there, Donald Ross, Robert Trent Jones, Trip Davis. Talk about the tinkering that has gone on with PFC over the years.
Yeah, I think like many designers do, and and again from the anecdotal stories that I hear from the members, those instances were more one hole here, one hole there. They weren't necessarily a whole scale change. I mean, the golf course did have a big change when they bought additional property kind of across the street from Fox Chapel, which is the current holes 11 and 12. I mean, when it was built, it was a beast. It was 6,700 yards 100 years ago.
Wow.
And they used to have a par 5 that was over 600 yards that went downhill to where the maintenance facility is now, that was to an island green. And then, the history of the 18th hole, which was a par 4, basically climbing up about 23 stories. And, they had some heart issues with some participants. So they ended up building that elevator in the 30s, which is a 7-story hike from the 17th green to the 18th tee. So the 18th hole is a wonderful par 3. It's one of the best holes on the golf course. But over the years, the designers and the course architects, there's been some input. They've done some changes, but by and large, the membership will tell you that this is really, really close to the original that Finley built, other than maybe some bunkers or some topography and things that they did. But we can overlay today's routing to the original routing, and it's extremely close, which is another testament to how well this place has held up over the 100 years of time, and the uniqueness of the topography, the ups and the downs, and it's a lot different than Fox Chapel. It's a lot different than Oakmont. But it's just an unbelievable piece of land, and Finley really nailed it to start. And they've had some changes as they've expanded a little bit, but the yardage is still relatively 6,700 yards since the day it was born to now. And it's a really fun route. It's a really good walk. We've got a great caddy program. We're doing 24,000 rounds now, and it's the members just love it, and they're rewarded by the superintendent every day. It's just an immaculate golf course.
You mentioned majors, and the course has hosted several major championships. It hosted the 1937 PGA Championship, which was won by Denny Shute.
Yep.
He also won an Open Championship back in 1933, so he was a great player back in the 30s. Mr. Palmer had a near miss, you mentioned, when the Western Open was held at PFC in 1959. He ended up losing to Mike Suchak by a stroke. But there have been major championships that have been played on that course. Can you see that maybe, hey, we might get another shot at a major at some point here in the not too distant future?
The short answer is no, but the long answer is I think it's a tremendous venue for a Solheim Cup. It would be the perfect yardage. The golf course has so many natural amphitheaters. The clubhouse would be an unbelievable spot for the players. The city would be an unbelievable host for the players. The golf course itself would never be long enough to host anything on a male professional level. Even last year we had the state open. You got guys, the first hole is 465, and you got guys hitting wedges into it. And the second hole is reachable with less than driver. The third hole, they're hitting par 5, they're hitting 9 irons into it. And with all of that, there's one person that broke par. So
wow.
it still stands the test of time, and it can be set up to compete with anything, but it would become a wedge contest, and I'm not sure the PGA or the USGA would look upon that as a favorable venue for it. But it's a great infrastructure for a Solheim Cup. It's a great place for a Solheim Cup. The city would be awesome. You put it in the fall, you put the ladies on the ball field, or have them throw out 24 first pitches, at a Pirates game in the fall in September. It'd be an awesome scene. And what Fox Chapel did for it does continually for, not only did they do it for senior the senior tour, and now they did it for the ladies senior open, and what Oakmont does for the USGA and all their major championships, and I know they've got an amateur coming up again at some point, because I think they have 9 majors in the next 30 years. So the Pittsburgh region is so golf loving, that to not include Field Club in that rotation of any sort, I think would be a mistake. But you also at the same time have to make a bid, and that's something that I've I've got the paperwork to do, and I'm working on it. And it's just difficult to balance, bringing something to this region when Oakmont's going to have a major, you know, for a lot for the next, through 2060. So I'm not sure how favorable it will be to bring, an event of that stature back to this region, because you do tax a lot of people. They work hard, and it's not a 1 week thing. It's a year long, multi-year long, and years of preparation and site visits and volunteers, and so it's a lot to ask. But I certainly would love to make a bid and see where that goes, because I think the field club is just it is such a darling of golf. Having worked at Oak Hill and Inverness and seeing Oakmont, it is such a darling in the golf world that to keep it off the lens of the eyeballs that would catch a Solheim Cup, I think would be a travesty of some sort.
Chris, just a couple more before I let you go. And I think that's one thing that you sort of alluded to a moment ago. Pittsburgh isn't always thought of as a great golf destination, but I think that's wrong. I think there are so many wonderful golf courses in a very small radius, as you alluded to earlier on, that it should be thought of as more of a great golf venue and a great golf destination. Talk about some of the other great courses in and around the area that people need to check out.
Yeah, and I have old assistants that have become head pros that say, hey, we're making a trip, and it's a bucket list trip. It's Fox Chapel, Field Club, Oakmont, and then you also have Laurel Valley, which is Mr. Palmer's place, which had a Ryder Cup. You've got Allegheny, the great John Avers pro there. That's been around for over 120 years. That's an awesome place. One of the top five, or one of the original five founding members of the West Penn Golf Association with Field Club. St. Clair is off the charts good. It's really hard, but it's really cool. Jay Mull's an excellent golf pro there. There's just so many great golf courses. It's an unbelievable place to play section events because you play so many of them. And so if you just take those seven, like you were going on a trip to Ireland and you had a 7-day trip, or Scotland or anywhere, and you say over 7 days you're going to play Oakmont, the Field Club, Fox Chapel, Longview, Allegheny, St. Clair. I mean, I would put that up with any 7-day golf trip in the world. It's just unbelievable, and it's right here, all within an hour and 10 minutes of each other in Pittsburgh.
To that point, PFC is just a few miles from downtown Pittsburgh. We also don't think about great golf courses being near downtown, but you guys are right down the street, essentially, from Point Park and everything that's going on in the city.
Yeah, we're 15 minutes from the city, and Longview actually overlooks the river. They did a wonderful job creating some space and taking some trees down that were blocking the view of the river. They look all the way down the river, and across the street from there is Green Oaks, which is very nice. And yeah, it's awesome. I mean, the golf in Pittsburgh is truly bucket list style. The hard part is they're all private, so nobody's really booking destinations unless you know somebody. So, but to have people come and say, yeah, we're playing Field Club, Fox Chapel, Oakmont in 3 days on a 2-day weekend, that is just stuff of dreams if you're an avid golfer.
100%. Chris, before I let you go, let our listeners know, how can they stay up to date with you and all the great things that you're doing out there at Pittsburgh Field Club?
Well, you can find me on Twitter at PFC PGA Pro, and on Instagram at PFC Golf 1882. This time of year, we're not very active in it because we're just so active in our members events and things of that nature. But in the off season, when things calm down a little bit, we start prepping for 2025. We do share a few more things and get a little bit of my personal life and my kids. But it's just always very thankful to be on with you, Chris. And I love this town. I know you do too. And let's hope these Pirates turn it around here.
Absolutely. And now we're looking forward to the Steelers. We get our first Steeler weekend, so both things going at the same time. So yeah, hopefully that all goes well.
They got to sign Sid here soon too.
Yes, indeed. I keep waiting for that. I cannot imagine what it's taken this long to do to get Sid signed.
I can't either. And I know they talk about it, and not to take your time, but they there's a sense in the city that the Fenway Sports Group is more business-like than when Mario owned it. So so they're going through everything with fine-tooth comb, and it's just there's an odd anxiety amongst the Penguin fans in town. I know they still want to get Freiermuth signed for the Steelers, and then you got a ticking bomb going off with Skeens. And so it's an
Right.
exciting time to be part of Pittsburgh sports. That's for sure.
Indeed it is. Chris, I can't thank you enough for taking time out of your night to come back and be a part of the show. You're fantastic, my friend. I hope we get this privilege of having you back on the show again soon.
I love to do it again. I always feel lucky when I'm on with you. Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Chris. That is the great Chris Sheehan, folks. And I tell you, just a wonderful guy. He's been a wonderful friend of this show for many years. At PFC PGA Pro is where you can find him on Twitter. You can find him on Instagram, Christian_Sheehan_PFC. Follow him in both places. And I tell you, I've taken a look at the videos. I've never had the privilege of going out and playing at PFC or seeing the golf course, but I have taken a look at the videos, and that golf course is just pristine and in just fantastic shape all the time. You always hear about how Oakmont could host a major at any moment, that they're always ready. They're always in major championship condition over there. Well, I think the same thing can be said of PFC. The golf course is just an unbelievable layout. And like I say, so many great designers have had their hand in it. So they've done a great job. And I love the fact that Chris said that you could overlay the original onto this one and be pretty darn close. That's fantastic as well. So they haven't gotten too far away from what Finley did way back when. And then when you hear about some of the intricacies of the golf course, he mentioned the 18th hole. You need an elevator to go from the tee to the green. That's just how it is. And he talked about how some guys have had some heart issues. We've talked about that in previous times that Chris has been a part of the show. Guys had heart attacks. Guys died trying to climb that thing in the middle of summer and then late in the winter. So that is just what it is. But they've remedied that. They've made some really interesting design changes to make it now into a par 3. So that's something that I can't wait to go see at some point. But like I say, Chris has been a wonderful friend for many years. Great family. You heard him talk about that earlier. Great family, great support system, and now at a great golf course in my hometown of Pittsburgh. Like I say, hopefully with the next time I'm in town, I get an opportunity to go over and see Chris and check out the golf course because it's on my bucket list. All right, my friends, it is time for me to put a bow on this week's edition of Next on the Tee. I want to send out my sincere thanks once again to Jonathan Yarwood, Tom Pertzer, Dr. Bob Winters, and Chris Sheehan for joining me. Scheduled to join me next week are, of course, Tom Patcher will be back to kick off the show just like he does every other week. One of the all-time great golf writers, Tom Coyne, is going to make his Next on the Tee debut. Very excited about having Tom as part of the show. Our very good friend John Mahaffey will be back. It's always a great time and a privilege to get to spend some time with John. So it's going to be a really fun show, folks. I hope you'll come back and be a part of it with us. I want to thank my friends again over at the Pittsburgh Tribune-Review for hosting this show on their site. You can find it by going to triblive.com and then click on the sports section. You're going to find the most recent episode for you right there front and center on the home page of the sports section. If you click on Sports and then Podcasts, and then you'll be able to see the Next on the Tee logo. If you click on that, there are several episodes from this season available for you there, so you can catch up on anything you missed. You can also find the show on Good Pods, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Audio Boom. Pretty much everywhere you get your podcast content, you'll be able to find Next on the Tee available for you there as well. But I want to thank my friends over at Good Pods for making this show one of their recommended podcasts. So please download their free app and stream your favorite podcast right there on your favorite device. But like I say every week, folks, my sincere thanks go out to all of you for being the greatest supporters in the history of podcasts. I appreciate each and every one of you so very much. Until next week, hit 'em straight, my friends.